Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, recently I was asked to endorse a book written by somebody who sat with us quite a long time ago, Joan Stam, her name is. She lives in Seattle, and she does flower arranging. It's her expertise. I think she even has earned a certificate to allow her to teach flowers. And however, she and her sister were both English teachers in Japan at one time. And a few years ago, she felt as though her life was in disarray and the world was in bad times. And she was very disturbed and distressed by it. And she got the idea that she wanted to do the pilgrimage on the Kanon Sama. Kanon, as you know, is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, or Kuan Yin. And there are several 33 temple tours of Kanon in Japan. And so she and her sister decided that they would do this. And it's the one that starts out in Kyoto and reaches far out from Kyoto and finally makes its way back to that city. So they did it, and she's written this book about the 33 temple tour. Entsuji is on one of the 33 temple tours, in the Chugoku temple tour, and so the great statue of Kanon-sama and a new one that has been put up at Entsuji, or at least a little tiny temple devoted to Kanon, right as you first come onto Entsuji from one of the directions. That's there, and many, many pilgrims come and walk the path to Entsuji. So, anyway, this talk tonight is about pilgrimage. I thought it would be a nice talk because some of you are going on holiday or you are going far and wide and they're here and there, and summertime we do that. And the notion of pilgrimage is actually very well known and practiced in Japan. Right at the very beginning of this book, maybe the third or fourth sentence in a preface, Joan writes that some people have suggested that when we go traveling, if we call what we are doing pilgrimage rather than being a tourist, one is being a pilgrim, the idea is that it would change the world. It would change the attitude of the world if we were treating the places we visit as sacred places and entering those places that we visit with the notion that we will be transformed by that visit, that all of our footsteps are sacred, and that we will honor places more deeply when we visit them. So the notion of pilgrimage is very, very old in the world. And most of the world's religions have sacred pilgrimages related to them. China has the 5 big mountains are pilgrimage sites. And then there are 4 great sites to Buddhist temples and 4 great sites to Taoist temples that are very, very well-traveled routes in China. Japan has many, many sites, many, many pilgrimage sites. There's the 108 pilgrimage around the island of Shikoku, and it's a little bit more difficult one to go to visit 108 temples. Most people wouldn't do that in one trip. They would make various trips to visit all of those temples. But once again, the idea is that one brings some particular idea of one's search or one's sense of devotion or one's need to lift up one's life and to visit these sites that we believe have some kind of special energy to them, some special recognition of maybe miracles happened there, or there's something special about them. And in visiting them, we ourselves are transformed, and we are we receive some merit, or we receive some lifting up of the heart-mind by visiting them. Most of the ones in Japan are related to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, the Kanon-sama, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And Bodhisattva of compassion is also the one who takes care of travelers, who oversees travelers, as well as taking care of the underworld, as well as children who have died, and also actually, I'm sorry, mixing that up with Jizo at the moment. But Avalokiteshvara has, a big reach into the world. The 1,000-armed Kanon-sama holds some kind of tool for every possibility of catastrophe or need or something. And so there's enormous devotion to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, to Kanon-sama. Very powerful image in Japan. And the Kanon-sama at Entsuji is this enormous statue. So the book begins with a temple that I believe we visited together, Mickey, with Tokunaga Sensei. The very first temple we went to in Kyoto that was way up the big winding hill. It's Kiyo, something Dara. Kiyu, something, I'll think of it in a minute. The whole meaning, it means pure stream temple. And it's a temple that is very prominent in Kyoto. It's one of the most favorites. And if you remember, the young girls and boys there were doing some kind of dance or something. They had to jump over something, and if they could make it across, they would have a good marriage, something like that. Do you remember that? Or they would get married next year, or there was something like that. There were many things like that in Japan, where if you do this little trick, something great will happen. But that was at that particular temple, and it was a sort of a side piece to the meaning of the temple. It's the temple is known as the birth canal of the Bodhisattva. So it's sort of this passageway through the opening to life, new life, this spring. Kiyu. At any rate, it's a very, very busy temple, and when Joan writes about this particular temple, it is so busy, it is so full of pilgrims and so full of people that it was difficult to find herself in the sense of reflection that she was hoping for. And many of the temples are quite busy with pilgrims visiting them. So this sense of pilgrimage, this sense of what is in us that leads us to go somewhere, or to take a journey of some kind, to search out for ourselves what we want to answer, or what we want to find in ourselves, what we want to reflect on. Very important, and for many of us, we maybe have that feeling, and very difficult for us to get away because our lives are full of our responsibilities. To some degree, the path of the ancestors here is that kind of intention, that we walk around from one station to the other and we reflect upon the ancestors, and we walk through that passage and we come out to the other end, and having reflected upon those who've come before us and those who are still with us in many, many ways. But I really, really want to talk about Dogen tonight, Dogen's notion and Dogen's idea about pilgrimage. He mentions pilgrimage many times in Shobogenzo. And he has one particular chapter that has two different translations. I brought both translations here. The Shasta has on seeking one's master far and wide. And it's about the pilgrimage, it's about the notion of pilgrimage, to go in search of one's master. And Dogen says many, many things. I want to finish up with that one. Dogen, he's talking first here about great master Gensha Shibi, was once summoned by his master Seppo, who said to him, "O Shibi, my austere monk, why haven't you gone out on a pilgrimage to seek a master to train with?" He replied, "Bodhidharma did not come east to China for that, nor did the second ancestor go west to India for that." Seppo thoroughly approved of what Shibi had said. So, Dogen is getting at here pretty much the idea that the notion of pilgrimage or henzan, that is, to go for a novice to go out seeking the teachings of other teachers, Dogen is getting at very much in this little koan here, that it isn't necessary for anybody to go anywhere, that the true pilgrimage is within oneself, and that on seeking one's master far and wide is ultimately seeking one's true self, one's original self. One's true master is simply within oneself. So this, on seeking one's master far and wide, is, not exactly what it is. And what is translated in the other book, the Hensan chapter, is called Thorough Exploration. Will ultimately come to the same meaning, I think, but the thorough exploration Dogen is getting at, that is what a pilgrimage is. It's essentially our interiority, our own seeking within ourselves, what we are about, what the deep meaning of our life is, what our intention in life is, and what we are here for. So the thorough exploration is not the pilgrimage out to China or to Japan. It is right here under our feet, and the ultimate state through and through is there being no strings under the feet, which means in China they used to tie strings around birds to keep them from flying away, tie the strings to something which would stop the bird from flying. So the no strings under your feet means that you will look in all of the chambers of the heart mind and allow oneself to be liberated, allow oneself the total freedom of exploration. No strings under one's feet. And the appearance of clouds under the feet, which is I believe the lifting up of one into transformation. Maybe wrong about that, but I think that's what that is. There's so many terms and metaphors used in this culture, in the Chinese and the Japanese culture, that we don't have. They're just not our metaphors. So the chapter continues in this sense, and thorough exploration is just sitting and getting free of body and mind. The state at the present moment in which going is going there and coming is coming here, there being no gap between them, is thorough exploration with the whole body, and is the whole body of the great truth. So we have many times in Shobogenzo where Dogen speaks about there's no coming and going, no sense of coming and going. Even if we go somewhere, there is no sense that we have removed ourselves from our connection to the original self. So no coming and going here. No coming, the state at the present moment in which going is going there and coming is coming here, there being no gap between them. No sense of coming and going. So we don't have to go anywhere, even though we go places, even though Mickey is going on a pilgrimage to Spokane and also up to the Garlic Festival a little bit later. We take ourselves with us, and we understand that we lift ourselves day by day, every day in all we do, into the spiritual activity of the Buddha. So there is no separation of the work that we are doing and Buddha mind. So every day, our attempt and our hope or our wish is to apply or to spiritualize everything that we do. So our trips to St. Louis or to Phoenix or to Southern California or wherever it is we go, to Texas, is spiritualized because we take the Buddha with us. The whole body and mind goes to wherever we go. And there is no coming and going in that because the entire body is there. Visiting the 4 oceans and 5 lakes does not cause the 4 oceans and 5 lakes to experience through exploration, but only makes it slippery on the road and slippery underfoot, thus causing us to forget thorough exploration. Meaning, we go to some place, we see some fancy place, and we forget that this is still the self experiencing the self. In general, because we see it as thorough exploration, to explore to the end that the whole universe in the 10 directions is the real human body. So we are the Buddha mind and the Buddha body moving through the entire body, the real human body, which is the real body of Buddha. We can investigate the real state in which Bodhidharma did not come to the eastern lands and the second patriarch did not go to India in the west. So no coming and going. Bodhidharma didn't go. He didn't choose. His life went that way, and his life moved to that place in which he manifested and continued to manifest the Buddha Dharma and the Buddha mind where he was. No coming and going. The whole universe is the 10 directions. In the 10 directions is the real human body. That's such a stunning thing to be able to fathom. When human beings die, our mind does not remain. It is because we have grasped death that mind does not remain. Death has grasped us, we have grasped death, mind does not remain. Thus, we can conclude that the whole human being is mind, and the whole of mind is a human being. We investigate in experience the front and back of each such partial thought. So this huge exploration of oneself takes place wherever we are. And while we do benefit from going places, from changing our location from time to time, provided we spiritualize that, we deeply benefit from that exploration as we try to see ourselves in that experience as Buddha mind. So, this is repeated with a different translation. To seek the Master far and wide simply means just sitting there, dropping off body and mind. It is as if the present moment one goes to where one goes, and one comes from where one comes, without there being the slightest gap between them. This is seeking the Master far and wide with one's whole body. This is the whole body of the Great Way. To go on beyond the top of Vairochana, Buddha's head, is the meditative state that is utterly still. That is the state of samadhi. Beyond Vairochana's head is pure samadhi. To sit in such a way is to do the full exploration, to sit here and now with full intention of being here and now, and thoroughly examining ourselves, thoroughly understanding mind, totally seeking that completion. Decisive attainment of such a state is Vairochana's Buddha going on. To thoroughly awaken to seeking the Master far and wide by leaping forth means that the gourd leaps forth from the gourd plant. So the notion of pilgrimage is a very wonderful one for those who are going to get in a car and go somewhere, or a plane. It's very wonderful. And so is staying right where one is. Very wonderful. So all of it, so long as we understand the deep exploration of one's life, of this, the honest and goodness celebration of that one is alive to be able to do that, is astounding. That we have the gift to be able to even hear about it is so astounding. So, when we travel, no coming and going. I think on a slightly different level, John Kabat-Zinn has his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. Very similar kind of thing. And so we don't get away from ourselves, actually. Understand ourselves wherever we are, allowing the exploration of the self to be that pilgrimage, to be that teacher of ourselves. to allow it to transform us. It is deeply worthwhile. So, maybe you have some thoughts. It's as it is. Yeah, June.
I completely identified with the scenario of the going to Japan. There was 4 of us that made the trip, and the experience was the main thing I felt was being locked into the airplane, and you don't have a choice. You're there, and it transports you to where your destination is, even with the side stop or whatever that takes place on it. But it's all part of that period of time, which means nothing once you're there, because once you're there, that was the goal, to be there, and then we experienced everything there, and then the return trip back. But there was that sense of time sort of stood still during the trip on the plane, and allowed the mind to anticipate or prepare for what was there. And the experience was incredible. It was my one trip over there, but
yeah. Now, this is the point, of course, of pilgrimage, that we experience ourselves and are transformed by that. So I think that was, for you, I know that was a very transforming pilgrimage, very important one. And so...
but then there's so many temples to go to once we were there, and then to make that pilgrimage even more intense inside. We weren't in many cities, but there was a lot to explore and to experience.
Well, one could also go to the tulip fields on pilgrimage, and not just to temples. One could go into nature on pilgrimage. One could, go on a hike as a pilgrimage and be transformed by that. I think that in doing so, there is the intention of that, however. And I think that to make it a true pilgrimage is to deeply spiritualize the activity, the action, and the intention to go and to recognize that we ourselves are there, that we experience whatever we experience there, and we open ourselves and allow ourselves to receive what the great universe has to give us, and that we are benefited and enlarged by it and made sacred. So, but there are definitely a lot of temples in Japan.
And it also felt very safe. It was, I was thinking, you can't do that in our country here and feel safe in some of those remote places that one might end up in. There was a safety feeling to the trip there. Even though I didn't speak the language, it wasn't a problem.
So, in the case then, if one were to do that in the United States, one would have extraordinary faith in Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva and call upon the protection of the Bodhisattva. And really, really understand that we are constantly protected. So one would be okay.
Yeah.
And if one were killed, then that would be the end of that mind, and it's okay. Joan in her book talks about all of her enormous, she's quite forthcoming about her own neurotic worry about whether her feet were going to hold up, whether her heart would be okay, whether her sister's heart would be okay. She first had problems with her heart, and her sister had problems with her feet, and then they switched places. They switched problems. And whether they were going to have enough food, whether the hotels, just constant worry about it. And the pilgrimage itself teaches us to be okay. It teaches us to give up and to give away those concerns and to rely on the Bodhisattva to lead the way. So Kannon Sama is a very powerful Bodhisattva. And so that exploration of oneself in that activity of the pilgrimage would be to hope to come to the other side of that and to give away those fears and neuroses about the pilgrimage itself.
There's this dynamic in this that I don't quite understand. This idea that you only experience your own mind wherever you go, but at the same time you meet what is bigger than you,
Yes.
that is transformative,
Yes.
the thing that you have reverence for. It seems different than the self.
It's always there. It is always there, but I think that the realization of the original self is, at least for the time of realization, emerging with the great Buddha mind. That is what it is. Not different from Shakyamuni Buddha's awakening.
So everything is mind, it's not your mind.
Correct. Yeah. It's not your mind. But we experience it as this being here, at least on this small level that I am. I experience myself wherever I go. And as we progress in that, let's say that we are doing some kind of pilgrimage, as we progress in that, this small self falls away. And that would be the hope. That would be the great pilgrimage, right? And that, we could also say that all of life is one pilgrimage. Your whole life, my whole life is one pilgrimage for every place that is met. So in that sense, that we grow and we blossom in that realization. But you're quite right. We visit a sacred site and we know that there's something there that's greater than we are, and yet we're reaching for it. So certainly in Buddhism, the total awakening is the same as Shakyamuni Buddha's awakening. No separation in that. So, at least for the time within that experience, there's no sense of arrogance that would think that I'm bigger than anybody else, something like that. It's just a realization that that's the natural state, that we are all that. Realization of what we truly, truly are. So, it's not individual, it's not me, it's not this little self. So, Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we can't speak to what that is. We can't name awakening, and so it sort of rides ahead of us in a sense, or it actually surrounds us all the time. And in a moment, something can awaken us. So we're surrounded by it constantly. We are it actually, and yet it's unrealized. So we have this sense of it's bigger than we are, and yet it is what we are. So that wonderful sentence, the whole human body. The whole universe in the 10 directions is the real human body. Dogen Zenji attributes this expression to Master Chosa Keishin. The whole universe in the 10 directions is the real human body. So, Gensa, further down in this, Gensa preaches to the assembly, I and old Master Shakyamuni have experienced the same state. Then a monk steps forward and asks, I wonder what person you met. And the master says, the third son of the Shaw family on a fishing boat. Well, we have to go way back to some other story and some other metaphor to be able to get, to be able to get to that. But it's Dogen Zenji will go on about this, about Gensa's experience is the same as Shakyamuni Buddha's, and anyone's awakening is the same as Shakyamuni Buddha's awakening. And that is what the Buddha said in the very first place. That my awakening, I awaken with the whole world. The whole world awakens as I awaken. So, that's something to sit with. The whole body in the 10 directions is the true human body.
So, our lives are a pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
What we share is experiencing. What we differ in is the content of our experiences. Our life paths, we cross, we go away.
Mm-hmm.
The experiencing is common.
Yes.
We get caught up with the content. Oh, my life is this way.
Yeah.
Your life is
Yeah.
that way. And then we start making judgments about our lives and so on. But bottom line is experiencing in mind. What is the it's all mind. I'm lost.
Maybe you're found.
Hmm.
This is called thorough exploration. What you are doing is thorough exploration. And that is what that chapter is about, calling us to thoroughly explore and to thoroughly understand experience and to understand these things. And the only way we can do that is to look, to continue to look and examine. And that is thorough exploration. So you are doing it.
It's so sad that distraction seems to be the rule of the day for some. It's so easy to be distracted.
Yeah, that's Dogen said that, and you see slippery slope, or you see this, or you see that, and before you know it, you forget that. You forget to be present. So, but that's just human. And we are in the awakened world, like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, such as it is the awakened world trying to awaken. Yeah.
Question. Being awakened to the present situation, but can't being awakened to everything that's happening at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not important to isolate one from the other.
Right.
It's the object is to experience in totality everything that happens, whether we like it or not. Everything comes at us.
Yeah. It does. But we are also, don't forget, we are in the relative world, and we are human beings, and at the same time that we are talking on a very lofty platform at the moment, at the same time, we can't take everything in that same way. Unless we're profoundly in the state of profound awakenedness, then you could maybe do that. But we can't handle all that happens.
But our filters do that. Our filters do isolate us from crazy.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. There are limits. We are limited in the amount that we can handle so far as what you are talking about. So, one person's suffering is everyone's suffering. So we need to see one person suffering. You don't have to. We can know that the whole world is suffering. If we can totally comprehend and understand one person's suffering, that's it.
The young man in Korea.
Yeah. So, I think that we really do understand suffering. We certainly can see the whole world scale of it. But to, think that we're going to be with every single human being suffering, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. It's just impossible. But we can look at the whole picture, the way that we look at our whole life. And so we look at our own life and we say, okay, we have suffered this much, 77 years of suffering and great joy at the same time. And so we can hold it in that way, that we can see the totality and we understand the conditions that are created by our existence and the way in which we create suffering. If we see how we create suffering, we can be okay in the world. Our own suffering. If we see how we create our own suffering, we can stop doing that, and then we can be with the suffering of the world in perhaps a more abstract way. And then the people who come around us, we try to help them. But we can't help every single person in the world individually. Except by awakening we can. But if we see all that we do as pilgrimage, it makes it very, very interesting, I think. So, I mean, certainly, Mickey is on a pilgrimage, very definitely. So, and very, very wonderful one, and opening and interesting for her, and enlarging, and all of that sort of thing. So, I think that's great.
Well, it seems to me that as science learns more and history learns more, I have come to see that pilgrimage is human nature. We have been walking since we first became human. We all walked out of Africa, we kept on walking till you came to the end of the continent, and then you looked at that island out there and you made yourself a little boat and you paddled out there, and you kept on paddling all the way to Australia.
Yeah.
We climbed over the Himalayas, encountered the end of Asia, got on little boats and discovered every single island in the Pacific.
Yeah.
We crossed over to North America, and we just keep on going. We keep on going. It seems to be not possible to human beings to stay still.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And this has, the more discoveries that are made, the more that it pushes back in time
Right.
the dates
Sure.
when
Right.
these things were happening. There's no cave so deep that explorers going down there haven't found some sign of previous humans
Right.
being there.
Yeah, we're way far older than we thought.
Yet we're way far older than we thought, and we've gone way far over the whole Earth, and now we're going to the moon. And
Yeah.
we're the only animal that does that. Other animals will spread out in the space available to them, and with the food supply available to them, and when they get to a place that the environment isn't suitable, they die. But we keep on going.
Yeah. Has anybody here been on any of the very sacred pilgrimages to Europe or? We have pilgrimages in Brooklyn, believe it or not, to go from one church to another or one basilica to another. I've done some of those as a child, but I haven't gone on I've been on plenty of pilgrimages, but not any of the famous ones. So,
And it seems to me that is why practice is always referred to as a path.
oh, that's very good. I like that. Very nice. Yeah, because it's a pilgrimage. Yeah. So, it's thorough exploration.
So we're on the path to knowing ourselves
Yes. Yeah.
and losing ourselves.
Yeah. Indeed. That sounds good.